Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the school year. And what a school year it's going to be. I want to thank you all for being here and being part of what's going to be a very interesting and, I'm going to say it, it's going to be a fun journey. So, before we get started, let's address the elephant in the room, which is why am I still here? Well, if you look closely, you can tell it's because of the suit. Yeah. See, some of you know that Judy and I enjoy taking cultural weekends in Pittsburgh, and we were there in January, and we do dinner and symphony concert. And I wandered into a men's store, and they talked me into buying a suit, which I was thinking I'm really not going to need because I'm going to retire. But they were pretty persuasive, and I thought, what the heck? One more suit for my last semester. And so I got fitted in February and I was to pick it up on March 21st. And we know what happened in March. So at the end of June, I picked up the suit. I was like, yeah, I like this. It's nice. So I decided to stay and work a little longer. Well, that might actually not be the truth, but here is the truth. Why am I here? General McLean has been more to me than a place of employment, more than a place I go and get a paycheck. It's been home, a second home. It's been family to me, and it's been very important to me all these years. So when I was asked to stay because of the situation, I couldn't say no. It just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I continue to feel like it's the right thing to do. I think the board and the administrators felt pretty strongly that change in leadership at this time would be bad for the district and bad for the new leader coming in. I think a new leader wants to come in when they can be innovating and doing things related to education, not being worried full time about a virus. So I'm here, and I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I said I just want to get through till about mid-September, and then I'll start thinking about how long I'll be here. The board has decided that they'll do the search in spring. They think, and I agree, that they'll get more applicants at that time. And they've given me the option if I decide I want to leave, then they'll bring in interim. But we'll see. Much more to worry about now than that, and so I want to get to it. First of all, as I often do it, this presentation, which is very odd this year, being here. I'm in a room all by myself doing this. Really weird, but that's the way it is. And I want to welcome some of our new staff. We don't have a lot right now, and we don't have a picture right now for Sydney Ware. Sydney is going to be doing autistic support in McCain Elementary. That was where Amy Iaquinta was, and she moved to the high school. And we'll get her picture eventually. Some of you know Alex Stoffer. She did some work for us as an aide, got her teaching degree, and she's going to be filling in for Katie Waddell this year. Katie's on sabbatical. And finally, Kristen Donnelly, our assistant pandemic coordinator. Some of you from McCain know Kristen from her, well, actually she has children in middle school as well. And you know Kristen from that, and she's already turning out to be a great asset and a great help. And we'll talk more about that later. So in the 2021 school year, we're going to be reinventing ourselves. I have always enjoyed, I've always been a student of leadership and management and enjoy reading books about that. And I'm looking forward to the books that are published following this pandemic. It's been fascinating to see the businesses that have thrived, businesses that have closed, and businesses that have just survived. And I think that even though we don't typically think of an educational institution in that regard as, failing or having to close, I think that it is possible for us to thrive, that this is an opportunity as well as a challenge. I want to start though, I want to make sure that some things are clear. I spent a lot of time this summer listening to webinars, being in live training, attending meetings where Department of Health officials were present. I usually in the summer I will have had 13 to 17 vacation days in the summer. I've had 5 this year. And a lot of the reason is because of all these trainings that have been ongoing. So I wanted to share with you something that is a little bit strange. I shared this last week on Facebook Live, so you may have heard this before. But I think it's important that we understand how things work with the Department of Health in terms of what they define as isolation versus quarantine. So when someone is tested positive for COVID, they need to isolate for 10 days. After those 10 days, if there has not been a fever for 24 hours, and that fever, without medication, reducing the fever, no fever for 24 hours, after 10 days, they go back to school or they go back to work. The health department told us it is very rare for anyone to be sick more than 10 days. Usually they're not sick even that long. And of course, we know it's the severe cases that go beyond 10 days. So they're back at it in 10 days. Quarantine is 14 days. And a person who comes in contact with a confirmed positive would quarantine 14 days from the date of contact. That's because the virus can manifest within 14 days. Now, usually it's pretty quick. It's maybe 2 to 3 days, but it is possible for it to be longer. So then that person would quarantine for 14 days. Now, here comes the real winner. If you're lucky enough to have living with someone, not just a family member, if you're living with someone who has been confirmed with COVID, your quarantine will include the 10 days that they're isolated and 14 days from their last day of isolation. That would be because it's theoretically possible that you could get the virus from them on day 10. So I point that out because we may be in situations, or you may come across situations that sort of, you'll be like, that person was positive and they're back before this other person that they were in touch with. So, and remember to be in quarantine, you have to be within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes with the person who is confirmed positive. Okay, so within 6 feet for 15 minutes with a person who's confirmed positive. So if you're in a situation where you're in the room with somebody who ends up testing positive, but you were never within 6 feet of them for more than 15 minutes, you won't be asked to quarantine. Theoretically, we could have situations possibly in a classroom where a student on that side of the room tested positive, but we can verify that X number of students never was close to them for any amount of time, and so quarantine is impossible. So every situation is going to be a little different. It's going to be a little bit odd in some ways when we look at the timing of it. The other thing to understand is that the mask is not considered in cases of determining this quarantine. So it's not a question of, well, yeah, I was within 6 feet for 15 minutes, but I was wearing a mask. That is good, and you should be wearing a mask. But one of the reasons they don't take it into account is they say, well, we're not sure. Did they really have it on the whole time? And did they have their nose exposed, et cetera, et cetera? And they make the statement, and when I say they, I'm referring to the health department, that masks do not decrease the length of quarantine, but they decrease the possibility of the risk of getting the virus. Okay, so those are just some things that I wanted to share with you. Also, understand that a person who has been put in isolation because they're confirmed, or a person that has been put in quarantine, will receive a letter from the county health department releasing them when that time period is up. Now, here's the problem. First problem is our testing is not very good in this country, and it is not happening quickly. So that, for example, a person may manifest a symptom on, say, a Monday. They go for the test on Wednesday, and then they don't get results for a week. So the next Wednesday, they find out they're positive. So they count all those days that that person who felt symptoms on Monday should isolate themselves until they get the results back. So that person would have been isolated for a week and a half, and if they get a negative test, they'll be sort of upset because they didn't really need to isolate, but they do need to isolate, if you know what I mean. But if they do test positive, then they would have another day or two to finish the 10 days, and then the health department releases them. They are so far behind in the health department with their paperwork in terms of letters to release people in isolation, letters to release people in quarantine. They have decided with school districts. I have a contact there, a person that I know who is in the health department who will give me the information about any student or faculty member in terms of they're okay to come back or they have X number of days. So that's how that's going to work. So let's talk a little bit about my survival tips for the coming school year. Okay, what is it we should do? What shall we do? Well, the first thing is I think we all need to understand how the virus is transmitted and not transmitted. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. The virus is transmitted through heavier drops of moisture that come out of our mouth and our nose. 6 feet would be a pretty far distance for that to travel. So 6 feet is a really safe distance. The World Health Organization maintains that 3.5 feet is enough. But you're going to find that in a lot of these guidelines, et cetera, everything is set at the outside possibility, which is obviously safe. So if you're within 6 feet of that person, those droplets may come in contact with you. You cannot get it simply by touching the virus. If someone is called shed virus, and I went and I touched the virus, I don't get it unless I touch my eyes, my nose, or my mouth while that virus is still active on me. Okay. Now I've been with a lot of medical people, and honestly, when they talk about all this cleaning we're doing and sanitizing, et cetera, it's a safety precaution. It's not as much of a threat or a concern as the transmission through the droplets. But we do it to be safe. My second survival tip, don't listen to the noise. There's a lot of noise out there and a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about this, that, the other thing about the virus. I listen to the headlines of the news and it's like, I quit watching the news this summer. I just quit watching. During the spring, I was watching every night. Me and Nora O'Donnell, we were there, man. But it's just a little bit out of control, and I think you're better off stick to looking at guidelines and articles from reputable places like the CDC, like the health department. Don't interpret extreme caution as extreme danger. And this goes back to what I was saying about the 6 feet of distance. There's also this thing that if 7 days have passed since a positive person was in the room, there's no reason to really give that room an extra cleaning, because 7 days is the outside edge of how long the virus would survive. Okay, likely it wouldn't even survive that long. So yes, we're cautious and we would clean within the 7-day period, but don't get freaked out about the 7-day thing as it being a danger point. And tune out the political BS. It's really reprehensible to me how politicians have used what should be a rallying point, something that brings us together, that we can all be on the same page about, and it's turned into political mess, and I advise you to ignore it. Also, understand that any one study is not conclusive, all right? You can read studies, and one will say this and one will say that. When they put together the guidelines from the health department or the CDC, they're not looking at one study. They're looking at the studies in total and trying to determine what it is that in total the studies tell us. And some of us, we remember that from our educational research class. You can't draw conclusions on anything. I've had people, parents sending me, individual articles about this, that, and the other thing, and it's just not enough information to make decisions. So I try to make all the decisions. I'm following the guidelines as they have been created from a number of studies. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that you look beyond the numbers. The week of August 10th, if you listen to the noise, they were talking about surge in Erie County. The numbers are up. You heard that Erie then went to full online learning because of the surge and because of ventilation. I'm telling you, it's mostly because of the ventilation, but surge is real there. But here's what you have to understand about the numbers. You're going to have a hard time reading this, I'm sure. So I'll explain it to you. If you take, on August 11th, I looked at confirmed cases by zip code. Okay, confirmed cases by zip code. In Edinburgh, 16412 zip code, and the McCain zip code, 16426. Those are our two major zip codes that make up the school district. 16412 had 21 confirmed cases. 16426 had 6. So that was 27. On that day, there were a total 951 confirmed cases. So our school district accounted for 27 of them. On that same day, 54% of those confirmed cases came from 5 zip codes in Erie. Okay, so, and some of those zip codes contain the nursing homes. I was told also by an infectious disease expert that on one day there were high numbers. 15 of those numbers were from the same family. So what am I saying by this? I'm not saying we ignore the numbers. I'm not saying that it means everything is hunky-dunky. What I'm saying is you have to be careful and understand there's no reason to panic in certain situations because numbers in a certain area are going up if you don't live there. Now, of course, we have the concern. I understand, as I mentioned in my Lancer letter, the virus does not have boundaries, and people go into those areas, etc. But the expert also told me that from the beginning, this has been the pattern of the numbers, much lower in the outlying parts of the county. And it makes sense. Your higher density population area, you're going to see a lot more spread of the virus. Okay, so above all, keep a sense of humor. We gotta keep our sense of humor before this, or we'll all go crazy. So I think it's important that remember that, and that we we're not making fun of a serious situation, but we have to have a laugh now and then, or we'll all go crazy. Which reminds me, the other night I went out to pick some basil, and it talked to me. It said, "Quit pestoing me." All right, that's really bad. I know. Come on. No videos this year, so you're stuck with that. So what has changed for 2021? Everything. Everything has changed. And that's okay. We can deal with that. I want to highlight just a few changes. You may get this in your buildings too. But our nurses' offices are not nurses' offices. They're suites. We're fortunate in the school district that all our buildings have nursing suites where we have multiple rooms. So in order to create isolation area for a potential case, all these nurses' suites have 2 doors. So for this year, it's going to be a different use of the doors. There will be a door to walk in if you're healthy, for example, kids getting their usual daily meds, and there will be a door to walk in if you're feeling ill. And they will be separated by nature of those rooms. Okay, so you'll see large signs that slap you in the face to let you know that. So, but just be aware of that. And if you do send a kid to the office, remind them which is the right, which door to go in. Our assistant pandemic coordinator, Kristen, is first and foremost a consultant. I felt that this idea came out of the Iroquois School District, and I thought that's a great idea to have a medical person, an extra medical person that can help me in terms of my understanding. She is also going to work directly with the nurses, and and she is also a connector for us. Her husband is the director of nursing at UPMC Hammett. She knows the infectious disease specialist very well and is going to meet with her every week. So we are going to have a real strong amount of resources for us throughout this entire year, which is going to be great. Water fountains, I wanted to let you know that so all the water fountains are disabled. You can't push the bar and get a drink, but you can fill a dispenser. However, in the high school was the only school with a lot of those dispensers. We have ordered more, but like a lot of things during this COVID situation, they've been delayed in shipping. But we're hoping that the new fountains get here this week, and so that we can get them installed quickly, or at least very soon, and so everybody will be able to take their water bottle and fill it. And speaking of things like that, we're also waiting for some plexiglass table dividers to come in, and hopefully today the iPads are coming for the students in kindergarten and first grade. And you've probably had this story this summer. You ordered something and it'll be there, and it's not. All right. Spring of 2020, a time we will never forget. I remember very clearly March 13th, it was Friday, when the governor's order came. Next day we had an emergency meeting at the IU with all the superintendents, and there was like so many questions. And from that point on, for 3 weeks, it was 24/7 screen for me. The phone, the iPad, the computer, constantly, day and night. And finally, in week 3, which would have been our first week of teaching, on Friday afternoon, I remember this clearly. I was sitting at my desk in my den at about 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and for the first time, there wasn't something I had to do immediately. I actually had a moment to think about, well, what shall I do next? And what came to my mind was this: what the hell just happened? That's exactly what I thought. What just happened? Well, I'll tell you what just happened. An institution that for almost 60 years has been delivering quality education in a certain way, in 2 weeks shifted completely the way we did it. A major change. If you want to talk about change and innovation, there it is. And we did it pretty well. Some better than others, but overall, we did it pretty well. We made the change. We did what we always do at General McLean. We rise to the occasion. We keep our students foremost in our mind. We do what's best for them, and we make it work. I think that this school year, we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do it even better than we did it in the spring. We're going to do what we've always done, which is take the resources we have, and we're going to meet kids where they are. Some of them are going to be online, some of them are going to be in front of us, and they're going to be all over the place in terms of their intellectual and skill development. But we're going to meet them where they are, and we're going to take them to the next level. We may find out this year that maybe schools are some of the safest places to be because they're monitored. There are adults there. It's not like college where they can go out to a party and not use their masks and have a whooping good time and spread the virus like crazy, like we're seeing happen. So maybe we'll find out that schools are some of the safest places to be. Maybe we'll find out that if the state or the federal government actually insists on going ahead with testing in the spring, maybe our reading and math scores will really shoot up because we're focusing on that this year. And Maybe we'll want to take some of the things that we learned from that and apply it to future years. Maybe we're going to find out that teaching online is something we can do pretty well, and we can become a formidable foe and a quality option for students instead of cyber charters, and save the money and put it into our own people doing our cyber school. There are a lot of things that we can learn this year, and a lot of things that we will do well, I'm sure. There will be challenges, there will be struggles, there will be many questions. But I'm confident, I really am. I'm confident that we're going to be fine, that we're going to have a successful year in terms of learning, in terms of safety. And I just would ask that everybody be calm and be committed to making this work and doing it together. Have a great year.